There is a scene in every old cartoon where the character runs off a cliff and does not fall until he looks down. Right now, Drake's fanbase is that character, and the ground disappeared a long time ago. Because while the man himself sits on a stream telling the entire industry the pen is not dry, while the loudest mouth in hip-hop media is on record begging him to take direct shots at Jay-Z, and while Jay-Z, a man who has not released a solo album in years, is somehow still controlling the whole conversation without dropping a single song, Drake's biggest fan accounts are at war with each other in a public room over who loves him the right way. Not who hates him. Who loves him the wrong way. That is where this fan base is right now, and I need everybody to understand that this is not an accident. Everything you are watching has been engineered. The setup, the stands, the cannibalization, this so-called perfect time narrative. All of it manufactured for a machine that needs the conflict to keep running. And the person it benefits the least is the exact same person whose fans are out here volunteering to fight for his honor for free. Because when you actually map who profits from a Drake versus Jay-Z battle, and I promise you we are getting to that breakdown, the picture flips completely. But before we get there, we have to deal with the fact that Drake's own people decided the enemy was each other. Let me set the table for you. In recent days, the same media voices that spent a year telling you Drake's pen does not scare anybody flipped overnight and started demanding he declare open war on one of the most protected names in hip-hop history. And the moment the man on the other end of those shots answered, on a festival stage in front of thousands, with nothing but his voice, the same fans who begged Drake to fire first spent the next stretch calling the response clout chasing. Think about that for 1 second. You cannot lose the plot faster than that. And the worst part is this is not a new pattern. This is the exact same playbook that had the whole culture in a chokehold 2 years ago, and most of the people running it never even realized they were the ones holding the rope. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Now, let's make sure everybody is caught up, because the timeline here matters more than anything, and the stand side has already tried to rewrite it. On May 15, 2026, Aubrey Graham, better known as Drake, released not 1, not 2, but 3 albums in a single day through OVO Sound and Republic Records, Iceman, Habibti, and Maid of Honor. 3 full projects, 1 drop, the kind of volume play that floods the streaming charts and forces the entire conversation onto one name. On Iceman, an 18-track project, there is a record called Janice SD Few, and on that record Drake raps the line "The jig is up." Now, for anybody who needs the subtitles here, jig is short for Jigga, which is one of Jay-Z's oldest and most famous nicknames. That is not a subliminal. That is a blinking neon sign pointed directly at Sean Carter, one of maybe 3 people in the history of hip-hop that you do not want to point a sign at. And reportedly, Iceman was full of this. Heavy references to the man who beat him in front of the entire world in 2024, imagery aimed at Kendrick Lamar all over the rollout, and according to fan breakdowns and reports that circulated, a big portion of the record was aimed directly at Jay-Z on top of it. Then Drake got on a 3-hour stream and went even further. He warned the industry, and reportedly specifically the chatter coming from Rick Ross and A$AP Rocky and anybody else teasing a new round of rap battles, and he said this. I'm quoting, "These guys are dropping albums, like hello and goodbye, and careful with that reply, cause the pen is not dry." So the man himself, on stream, publicly, issued a warning to anybody coming for him. The pen is not dry. Be careful with that reply. And the jig is up line? That was his words. His shot. Nobody put it in his mouth. And then, at the Roots picnic in Philadelphia, Jay-Z opened his set with a completely a cappella freestyle. No beat, no band, nothing but the microphone and the crowd, and he responded. According to the lyrics that circulated and the reports from the festival, he said a rapper can't be my op. He looked directly at the jig is up line and flipped it. The jig is up, I'm up 10. He reportedly mocked the chart talk, and he told Drake essentially that if you want to talk tough, go talk to the people who own your publishing. And right there, in a few minutes, a man who has not dropped an album in years seized the entire conversation and held it for weeks. That freestyle was bigger news than the 3-album rollout, and I'll come back to exactly why that is later, because it is the single most important fact in this entire story. Now, while all of that was settling, the rumor engine started spinning again. Music executive Ray Daniels reportedly came out and claimed that Jay-Z's next album is finished and ready to go. Roc Nation, Jay-Z's own company, responded publicly and officially. Their entire statement was 2 words, fake news. 2 words. And that is when Joe Budden stepped up and told Drake the time is now. On his platform in recent days, Joe said, "And I'm working from the transcript. I see the Drake shots on the stream. If you want to get to talking tough about that pen isn't dry, take the bait." And he called for Drake to stop dancing around it and fire direct, name the name shots. Because, in his words, Kendrick and Drake was years ago. Now we need to turn it up a little more. So let's talk about what's actually at stake here, because this is not just about rap. Musically, a direct one-on-one with Jay-Z is the one matchup nobody can honestly predict, because HOV's entire legend was built on out-rapping the people who underestimated him. And the people who underestimated him have been rewriting their own catalogs ever since. Culturally, this is about a man whose reputation is still healing from the summer of 2024, and another public loss at this stage would not be a dent, it would be a crater. Financially, there is an album rollout sitting on the table, a rollout the fanbase is already out there defending over questions about physical copies and stream counts, and a certified battle would move numbers for whoever survives it. But the risk to the brand is catastrophic if it goes sideways. And reputationally, this is the one I want everybody to sit with. If the clock starts ticking and Aubrey Graham is the one who has to answer for a shot that he threw, that is a completely different game than throwing subs into the void. Because you can miss with a sub. You cannot miss with a name. So the question this entire video has been circling is the question nobody in the comments actually wants to answer. What happens if he takes the bait? Now, let's start pulling the evidence, and we're going to lay it out in order, because the timeline is the entire case, and the stands have been working overtime to rearrange it. Evidence piece number 1, the warning shot. That pen is not dry line was not casual barbershop talk. It was a public threat, issued on a stream that thousands of people watched live, and it was aimed at the entire industry, with specific names reportedly in the crosshairs. And here is the thing about threats. Once you put one out there, you have invited a response. You cannot stand on a stream and tell every rapper in the building to be careful with that reply, and then act surprised when somebody actually replies. The reply was already purchased the second the threat left his mouth. Evidence number 2, the volume play. 3 albums in one day is not a creative accident. It is a strategy. Flood the charts, flood the discourse, make the entire month about you. And it worked, sort of. But here is where it gets funny, because if you remember the rollout, one of the most viral moments of that whole week was not a lyric and not a number. It was a fan, a regular person, a Drake supporter, who said out loud what a lot of people were thinking. She was fatigued. She had been streaming Iceman, she was tired, and she just wanted to listen to the other 2 Drake projects that dropped the same day. She wasn't going to stream Kendrick. She wasn't going to stream Jay-Z or anybody else. She wanted more Drake. And the fanbase went after her like she had committed a federal crime. Attacked. Dogpiled. For the crime of wanting to listen to more Drake, just in a different order. That tells you everything about the mentality inside that room, and I promise you we are coming back to it. Evidence number 3. The response itself. The Roots Picnic Freestyle. And I want to describe it properly, because it was not an album, it was not a single, it was not even a full performance. It was a few minutes of a cappella bars at the top of a festival set in Philadelphia, delivered by a man who has not had a new solo project in years. No beat to hide behind. No production to carry it. Just the voice and the words were surgical. A rapper can't be my op. The jig is up, I'm up 10. And the punchlines about the charts and the publishing that had the crowd going crazy. And that few minutes outconversed 3 albums and a 3-hour stream combined. Does everybody understand how crazy that actually is? A man who put out nothing outconversed a man who put out everything with a fraction of the effort. That's not opinion, that's what happened in the timeline. Evidence number 4. The official denial. Ray Daniels, a music executive, reportedly stated that Jay-Z's new album is finished. Rock Nation responded with 2 words, fake news. Now, on the surface, that looks like a rumor being killed, and it might be. But notice what happened next. The denial itself became the story. Every outlet ran the headline. The album rumor got more oxygen from the denial than it had from the claim, and now millions of people are debating whether the man has an album at all. That is how the rumor engine works. The denial is fuel, not water. And then there is evidence number 5, the numbers discourse, which is the most entertaining one of all. The stand side has spent the last stretch arguing 2 contradictory positions at the same time. Position 1. Physical copies do not matter. Streaming is the only currency, and anybody complaining about the rollout is a hater. Position 2. Jay-Z is irrelevant and washed, based on some reading of the data. But then the same people were pointing at his monthly listener count when it suited them, and now, by recent streaming counts, HOV is reportedly still sitting near the top of the board somewhere in that top 10, which kind of ruins the irrelevant argument, doesn't it? And here's the flip side they never want to address. If streams are the scoreboard, then streams are also manipulable, and the man's own fan base has been accused, allegedly, of coordinating streaming operations. I'm getting to that. So you cannot use streams as your proof of life in one argument, and then scream that stream numbers are fake in the next one. Pick a lane. And the kicker, the thing that sets up everything else in this video, is that every single one of these pieces, the threat, the volume, the response, the denial, the discourse, every one of them generates content for somebody. Somebody is eating at every layer of this sandwich. Hold that thought, because when you see what actually happened inside the fan base while all of this was going on, you are going to understand exactly who has been eating and who has been on the menu. And oh, do I have more? I've been holding the best part of the story for the middle of this video on purpose, because what happened inside Drake's own fanbase this week is the most embarrassing, most revealing, most self-defeating thing I've seen in a long time of covering this culture. So consider this your warning. If you are a stan watching this, what you are about to hear narrated back to you is going to make you want to log off for a week. And to the ones already typing in the comments, save it. Nothing you're about to say is going to sound smart after you hear what your own people said to each other in that room. Let's get into it. So here's the scene, and I'm going to narrate it fully because the audio is the whole story, and you don't need the footage when you have the words. A few nights ago, in a public space on X, two of the loudest figures in the Drake stan ecosystem ended up in the same room, and it went sideways in a way that had to be heard to be believed. On one side, you have What's the Dirt, a popular Drake supporting commentator who has built a sizable platform breaking down the beef saga from the stan-friendly side. On the other side, you have a guy known as OVO Mars, and I have to tell you about this man's biography before anything else, because it matters. His handle literally read, I am OVO. Not I support OVO. Not I rep OVO. I am OVO. This is a man who has convinced himself that he is the organization. And allegedly, according to what was said in that room and around it, Dirt had featured Mars in content, credited him with material, put him on, the way you would for an ally. At some point, the relationship went sour. And instead of hitting the phone, and these people, by their own admission, have each other's numbers, let me say that again, they had each other's numbers instead of a private conversation. It all came out in front of thousands of strangers. Mars came on that space hot, essentially accusing Dirt of going public with grievances that should have stayed private, with the classic line of reasoning, you could have called my phone. And the internet did what the internet does. It turned it into a meme instantly. The girls are fighting again. And honestly, that's the kindest thing you could call it, because when you actually listen to what happened, it stops being funny and starts being genuinely embarrassing. There was a moment where somebody in that room tried to play peacemaker, one sane person, literally saying that the two of them could have handled this offline, and the response from the combatants was basically to keep going. And that's the part that kills me, because both of these men have platforms built on the exact thing they were doing to each other, parasocial loyalty to a man who has never met them. And to make it even more absurd, the moment that got clipped and passed around came from a room where people were allegedly accusing each other of running group chats, coordinated streaming schemes, mass reporting of critics, allegedly even trying to get people fired, and making noise about tweets designed to stir up racial division. Now, I want to be really careful here. These are allegations made in the heat of that room, and I'm not vouching for any of them. But allegations like that don't stay private, and when it's your own people saying them about each other in broad daylight, the damage is done either way. The double standard goes even deeper. Because these are also the same stans who, one week, are at war with each other, and the next week are publicly begging the Barbs, Nicki Minaj's fan base, for help streaming Drake's project, talking about we can do this together. You cannot spend 1 week calling the Barbs the enemy and the next week asking them to run up your numbers. That is not a fan base, that is a fever. And here's the wildest part of the whole spectacle. The participants got genuinely offended when people reacted. There was a moment in that room where somebody basically demanded to know how another person knew anything about him. How do you know? In that tone. As if broadcasting your internal drama to the entire internet and then being upset that people watched it isn't the most backwards thing in the world. You published it. You set the room up. You invited the audience. And then you're mad that the audience laughed. That's the parasocial mind in its purest form. Desperate to be seen, terrified of what being seen actually means. Now, to be fair, and I always try to be fair, let me give the counter-arguments their due, because there are two of them and one is legitimate. The legitimate one: being a creator with an audience does not make your private disagreements public property, and if these people had real friendships behind the scenes, watching them blow up in public is a sad thing, not just a funny one. Fair. But the second counterargument is where it falls apart: the claim that all of this is being blown out of proportion by reaction channels and clip pages. Listen, you don't get to set up a public audio room, invite your beef, narrate your grievance in front of an audience, and then blame the people who covered it. That's like throwing a party and being mad that guests showed up. The clip pages didn't manufacture the words. The words were said, in the room, by the participants to each other, publicly. And this is the same pattern we've seen from that side all year: attacking critics, blocking anyone who brings receipts, crashing out on a fan for streaming fatigue, and now crashing out on each other. And I'll say it plainly, this isn't what a movement looks like. It's what a collapsing ecosystem looks like. And the collapse is not random, it's structural, which brings me to the part of this video where I have to stop laughing and start explaining, because what's happening here is bigger than who said what in a room on a Wednesday night. Somewhere around the 200th super chat, every hip-hop news outlet in the world starts to look the same: a man with a microphone, a camera, and an audience that pays him to keep the war going. And that is the first thing we have to name if we are ever going to understand what is happening here, because the entire Drake versus Jay-Z situation and the Stan implosion that came with it is not music news. It is a content economy. Joe Budden saying the jig is up was years ago. Now we need to turn it up a little more is not a music take, it is a programming decision. The man is a professional. He has spent more than a decade turning hip-hop drama into a product with a release schedule, and like any good product manager, he knows exactly what his audience pays to see. His audience pays to see Drake take the bait. That is the product. And I'm not even saying Joe is lying or that he doesn't believe what he says. What I think is happening here is more interesting than that. I think Joe is genuinely entertaining the matchup in real time, and the entertainment value is the entire point. A Drake versus Jay-Z battle would be the biggest content event in hip-hop media since the Kendrick War, and every single commentator, every clip page, every podcast, every reaction channel on the internet knows it. So the pressure is not coming from one man. It's coming from an entire industry pointing at Aubrey Graham and whispering, "Do it, do it, do it," because the industry eats either way. Drake wins, you get a year of victory discourse. Jay-Z wins, you get a year of autopsy discourse. Either way, the algorithm is fed. Now layer in the economics, because this is where it gets genuinely serious. 3 albums in a single day through OVO Sound and Republic Records is not a creative statement, it's a supply chain event. Flood the market, flood the playlists, and drown out every other release cycle for weeks. And here's the part the stans genuinely do not want to hear. That strategy worked perfectly, and it still lost the week, because the most talked about rap event of that entire rollout window was a no-beat freestyle from a man with no album. Not the #1 premiere. Not the combined stream totals of 3 projects. And a cappella verse at a festival. And that is not me being cute, that's the actual market data of attention. The culture will always outrank the machine when the culture gets something it can cling to. You cannot manufacture the jig is up, I'm up 10. You can only respond to it. And responding to it is the single highest risk move in modern rap because of the publishing dynamic that Jay-Z himself put in the freestyle. Go talk to the people who own your publishing. Let's break that down, because it was not an accident, and it was not a random bar. Jay-Z is not just a rapper, he is the infrastructure of the industry. The man has spent decades acquiring the very systems that artists plug into: labels, distribution, catalogs, the machinery that decides whose music gets paid, whose masters get licensed, whose legacy gets monetized. And according to multiple reports over the last 2 years, Drake's own business reality has been under heavy pressure, publicly documented legal disputes, settlements, and business friction that have nothing to do with rap. So the implication of that line was surgical. While you're flexing a pen, remember that the industry you're rapping from is a system, and the man who built a piece of that system just told you, in front of a festival crowd, that your real boss isn't a rival rapper. Whether or not that lands, and I want to be careful to frame this right, the bar itself changed the entire battlefield. Because now the matchup is not just bars versus bars, which Drake, to his credit, has always been dangerous at. It's artist versus architect. And that is the third angle, the one nobody wants to say out loud. The fanbase war is the cover story for a power war. Every single one of those stands fighting in that room believes they are defending Drake's honor from critics, when what they are actually doing is providing free labor for an engagement economy that does not pay them, does not know them, and does not